it, this is Ananya, and today's topic is based on understanding what is encapsulation and how can you access elements, or rather say private attributes of classes using getters and setters, and also the add property decorator. Remember when we were doing decorators, I had told that we will be studying about the property decorator. So this is the time we learn. Now, we saw one property of OOP, that is code reusability, and also how we can decrease our code length. Now let's see how we can hide specific data from users. This is technically called as data encapsulation. You basically wrap or bind the data or methods into a single unit so that external users cannot directly access them or modify them. Let's take a practical example. Let's say the R&D or research and development department creates all the products, right? And the accounts department keeps the record of which product has been sold, the frequency, the quantity, the total amount, and all of that. And now a person or employee from the R&D department wants to analyze which product is sold, how often, which one sells more, which one less. So he or she will need the data from the accounts department. Now that cannot be accessed directly. He or she has to give some reasons as to why they want the data, what are they going to do with it, and they have to go through the process through a certain person. Now that is basically a backbone idea of what encapsulation is. So you are hiding attributes of one class from the rest or other subclasses so that access and modification is restricted. Since we'll be studying getter and setters, let's understand what do they do. Basically, a getter helps in accessing the private attributes and the setter helps in changing or modifying them. It's pretty simple. Now, private variables. Now let's start off with an example. I'll explain what private variables are in just a minute. Now, I have a code that has a simple employee class, and you have the constructor or initializer inside it, where the salary of the employee gets initialized. Let's say according to your country's currency, you have a certain salary, let's say 10,000 denoted for the employee. And I create an object named details for the employee class. Now, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to try and print details.salary. It's pretty easy, right? But now, can you see this underscore here? This basically implies that the salary variable of the class employee is private, that it is not public, not accessible by external users. So if I try and print salary here, it should be giving me an error. For now, I'm going to remove it and try and see what happens. So let's run it. And there you go. You, as an external user, you could access the salary of an employee, which is generally not something that one actually wants to know. It shouldn't be accessed. Also, I have given the object, the details object, just to show that yes, it belongs to the main class. That is employee. Now, remember our single underscore before the salary variable. This makes a variable weakly private. Now, what is weakly private? That means if you were to access it from some other module and this variable belongs to the all method, then you could have accessed it. It is possible. So this single underscore before salary is a weakly private variable. Now let's run it. I don't want it. Okay. Now see, you've got one whole big load of errors here. And let us see what the error says. It gives you, or rather say it throws you an attribute error saying the employee object has no attribute named as salary. That is, you cannot access it, right? That's how you are hiding the salary of an employee. That is data encapsulation. Now that we have understood this, let's go a little more in detail. Now what I'm trying to do is, I am trying to externally set, or rather say modify my salary variable. Let's say it was 10,000, I want to make it 15,000. This is where getter and setter methods come into view. I have everything the same except for these two methods. I shall explain them in just a while. So you have your initializer, your class, your object, and you're trying to print certain things. Let's start off with the get salary. From the word itself, get salary, you can understand that you're trying to access it. And as I mentioned previously, getter helps in accessing the private attributes. Now, all I'm doing is I'm returning self.salary, which is a weekly private variable, through this print statement, that is object.getSalary method. Next, what I'm trying to do is I'm saying details.setSalary to 15,000. Okay, this is your getter method. This is your setter method. So what happens is I'm trying to change, or rather say I'm passing 15,000 to the variable amount. I'm trying to overwrite it to the salary variable of the class. Now let me run this and see what happens. You see, you could actually change it, right? It is possible. So if you use getter and setters, you all can do that. Now what I want to try and do is, as I mentioned, it is weekly private. Now let me give it a double underscore before this, okay, before salary. What you are doing is, by giving a double underscore, you are making it a very strong private variable. That is, it cannot be accessed anyhow. Okay, now if I try and run this thing, you are going to get an error saying the employee object has no attribute employee salary. Okay, it is not accessible in get salary, right? So you see, it is strongly private using the double underscore method. This is about making variables strongly private or weakly private and using getters and setters. Now let's say I want to try and manipulate this strong private variable and I still want to access it. Yes, there is a way, but it is kind of difficult to deal with. And that is where the add property decorator comes into play. I'm just going to uncomment this and let's try this out. It's everything is just the same. Again, we have something to do with only these two methods. That is the setter and the property. Now let's go stepwise. Add property decorator. We have learned all about decorators and what they do. So what happens is property decorator here acts as a getter method. Instead of using a getter method, you're using the add property decorator. So add property decorators help you to deal with a method as an attribute. It doesn't remain as a method anymore. It becomes an attribute. So now when I say I create an object and then I say print details of salary. All right, just to avoid any confusion, let me run this first and let's see what all is being printed. You have 10,000 and 15,000 being printed, even though these are strongly private variables. So the first print statement simply prints the salary, initial salary, that is 10,000. And next, when we are trying to modify it, let's see what happens. So we are saying details, that is the object, dot salary is equal to 15,000. You're trying to set it. So when you're trying to print it, it basically goes and accesses the getter, or rather say we'll use add property decorator via the sal, or rather say one short form of salary, the sal method. It accesses the sal method via the add property decorator, and through this print statement you get the salary. And now when you're trying to modify it, that is you want to set it, we shall use this add salary dot setter. Now what is this? So basically, if you want to modify a strong private variable, you say at, then your, let's say your method name, okay, and that is basically acting as your attribute now. So at method name dot setter. This decorator will do the task of setting the different amount, and rest of it remains exactly the same. So you need to keep two things in mind, that is add property and at say salary dot setter. And now if you try and say details.salary is 15,000 and print it, you will get the answer as we just saw. Now, what if I didn't want to do so much of work and let me just remove this add salary setter. I don't want to use it. This is too much of headache. Now you actually won't be able to do anything. Let me say I'm just going to comment this out. I'm not going to try and access it using the object.salary. I'm going to do that using your object.method name, or rather say the attribute name, details.sal is equal to 15,000. Now let's try and set it. As you can see, you are getting an error. Now let's see what the error says. It says that it is an attribute error which can't set the attribute. Fine, it printed the 10,000 value for us, but now it's unable to set it. And that is why you have to set it using the @sal setter. Okay, I hope you all got the importance of it now. Why we need to do a little more of hard work to get our code working. All right, so this was all about understanding what getters, setters, and encapsulation does. Let me just run it one last time so you can see the correct result. And there you go. All right, I'll see you all next time again with some other OOP concept. Till then, bye-bye.